Okay, good evening, folks. We're going to call the zoning board of appeals hearing for Thursday, December 28th, 2017, 6 p.m. Meeting to order at this time. At this time, I would ask the ZBA members to introduce themselves from right to left, please.
Andrew Orr.
Sean Shoemaker.
Bob Lehman.
Okay. I would also like to ask the audience members to please sign in on the sheet so that we know all who's present. Thank you. The purpose of this meeting is to determine if there will be a reconsideration of the ZBA's decision to deny the undue hardship appeal of Elijah Buda, tax map 45, lot 001-677, 102 Sequoia Lane, North Waterboro. This time, we need to decide if the board has jurisdiction to hear this request. And I would say we have, because we heard the original appeal, so that would give us jurisdiction. Right. So I would entertain a motion that we have that.
I make a motion that we have jurisdiction to make this appeal.
Second.
Review this appeal.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those that agree and in favor? 0. Very good. Second vote, 3. At this time, I will need a motion from a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals to make a motion to reconsider the ZBA's undue hardship decision dated November 30th, 2017.
I make a motion to take another look at it. The case reconsideration, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot that tongue tied.
All right.
I'll second that.
All right. Motion's been made to accept the reconsideration request and seconded. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I may, we want to use caution as we proceed tonight. Mr. Orr wasn't here through any of the meetings. I would think the chair might want to ask the applicant if they want to postpone tonight's meeting where Mr. Orr doesn't have any of the history of what transpired. That would leave, I'm not even sure if he should have input in the decision. So we could be careful in how we proceed from here on in. But at least we should ask the applicant if he wants to postpone this meeting tonight until we potentially could have a full board, or take it as it falls.
Okay. Appreciate your input on that, and that is also a bit of a concern of mine as well. Not to take anything away from a board member's activity, but if you're not up to speed to where what happened in the previous hearing, I don't know that it's...
I was at this one.
No. Andy was at this one.
Yeah.
You were at this one?
Yeah, I wasn't at the last one because I had to go to Pittsburgh for my mother.
Okay.
I was at...
We had a full board.
We had a full board.
Okay.
Yeah, the last meeting we discussed the reconsideration then.
Okay, then I apologize for misspeaking.
Yep. We wanted to clarify that
Yep.
as well myself. So. Okay, well, that being said, we have a motion and a second to hear the reconsideration. And any further discussion?
One more.
I have a question before we go further with that and actually approve that. It's my understanding that we're supposed to have new evidence that would facilitate that.
This kind of explains that.
Glenn, do you have one more?
I do.
Thank you.
So let me run through this briefly.
Please.
This is a court decision that was handed down. Unless an ordinance provides otherwise, the Maine Supreme Court has held that an applicant whose appeal or request for variance was denied has no legal right to request another hearing on the same appeal or variance unless he or she can show substantial change in the circumstances which provided that basis for the first appeal or variance.
If I may speak on that. Mr. Chair, can I speak on that? Can I speak on the issues raised by?
We haven't
Mr. Short?
officially voted to accept the reconsideration. We
No,
just
you
have a
have
motion.
a second and you're in discussion.
Yeah, I was thinking in discussion.
So if he's gonna answer
At this
that
time,
question-
can I ask him, I just want to make sure we're right with this. This is the first time we've dealt with this in a long time. Do you have new evidence beyond the scope of what was?
Well, first off, with respect to the information that was provided to you, your ordinance actually does provide for a motion for reconsideration. So when you read this and it starts and says unless an ordinance provides otherwise, the Town of Waterboro ordinance that was cited in my request for reconsideration does allow reconsideration on the part of the board if there has been, if the request for reconsideration is timely filed, which in this case it was. That ordinance doesn't have restrictions that say it can only be on new evidence or any other matter. It basically enables a party to request reconsideration from the board, which is what we're doing. I can speak also with respect to the basis behind our request for reconsideration, if you'd like at this point, but I don't want to get into public hearing kind of stuff that would concern you. But basically, there were certain issues that were raised at the last hearing, for example, with respect to the 30% expansion, what constituted 30% expansion, what didn't, how it was factored in, that I think the board probably should have that issue clarified before them as it considers the decisions. And then also some minor issues with respect to the hardship criteria, basically. I don't have a lot to add, but I think it's additional evidence that clarifies issues that were before the board, number one, and number two, presents some factual stuff that I think is more accurate than what the board based its decision on. And I didn't mean to sit down, Mr. Chair. If you have additional questions, I'm happy to answer them also.
Okay, yep. Has notice been, all the proper notices and everything been filed?
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna leave it up to the board. You guys have made a motion and seconded it.
Our ordinance does allow for reconsideration, but that's all it allows for. It doesn't say that the applicant shall provide for new information or not. But that court case I handed down to you explains what happens if someone takes it to court, and the court clearly came up with that decision.
Yeah.
On another note, I think I think you've gotten enough information from the town, and I feel comfortable that you guys made the right decision the first time. And I wouldn't be in favor of changing that decision.
Okay, and you guys have read this, number 7?
Right.
If you read that first paragraph, it's pretty clear. But, have you folks been provided with this as well?
Just now.
Just now.
Yeah. I'm gonna read this in the public, so while we've got the TV going, so people understand what we're talking about.
Yep.
We have information from the Department of Economic and Community Development Office and Community Development for the state of Maine. Code Enforcement Officer Training Certification Program, legal issue, dated June 2013. Chapter 7, second appeal of same decision or reconsideration by the Board of Appeals. Unless an ordinance provides otherwise, the Maine Supreme Court has held that an applicant whose appeal or request for a variance was denied has no legal right to request another hearing on the same appeal or variance unless he or she can show a substantial change in the circumstances for which the basis of the first appeal or variance. We can go into court names and all that, but authorizes the Board of Appeals to reconsider a decision within 45 days. However, a change of the statute requires a request for reconsideration to be filed within 10 days of the original date. That has been done. The entire process should be completed within 45 days, 45-day time frame. In doing so, the board is authorized to hold additional hearings, receive additional evidence before doing this. However, the board must give direct notice to the original appellant and/or applicant and to anyone else required by the ordinance or state law to receive special notice of this original procedure. Notice also must be given to the public in a manner required by the original proceedings. If specific individuals actively participated in the original hearing, the board should also notify them directly of reconsideration hearing. However, if the applicant has already filed a Rule 80B appeal from the board's decision, the board should not attempt to reconsider its original decision. If a request for reconsideration is received, the board must vote at a public advertised meeting as to whether it will entertain the request or deny it. Even if the chair knows that the board always rejects request filed too close to the 10-day deadline, the chair must schedule it for action at a board meeting if the person will not withdraw their request. The deadline for filing a Rule 80B appeal in a case where a consideration request is denied is 15 days from the denial of reconsideration.
I think that because our ordinance doesn't say that they have to have additional information or substantial, that we are all here and they're here with their lawyer, that we ought to give them the opportunity to speak.
It's a tough one.
Can't talk about life on a razor.
Well, it says right here, it says unless an ordinance provides otherwise. Our ordinance doesn't say that's required.
Now, the other part that's got me curious is the Rule 80B. Was that filed?
Okay.
It is not.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion?
And I'm sorry, I should just answer the question more fully. We have not filed yet. The timeframe to do it hasn't passed yet. We're waiting for the determination of this hearing today, and then we'll file accordingly.
All right, well, the board has made a motion, seconded, we've had discussion, I mean,
Your next step is to vote.
so I guess at this point, we'll vote whether to hold a reconsideration hearing. So that's, all those in favor? Two, opposed? Okay. At this point, we'll need to open the public hearing. So I take a motion that we open the public hearing.
Motion that we open the hearing?
Seconded.
Any discussion?
I just want to clarify with the board that now that you're reconsidering, this case moves right back to its original standing before you created the vote the first time.
Okay. So we got a meeting to, motion to, excuse me, to reconsider, motion to reconsider the request for the undue hardship, and we have a second on that. Any discussion? Yep, we're all set. And now we want to open a public hearing, need a motion for that. Second?
Second.
Yep, okay. Public
There we
hearing is
go.
open. At this time, I would ask that the applicant, representative of themselves, come to the podium and please submit your information to us.
I'm okay with working on top of this. But I'm okay with just working over it. I just didn't want something that you don't want me to see. Thank you very much, members of the ZBA and Mr. Charette. And I'm going to be brief, in part because we spent a great deal of time on this a couple of weeks ago. As I understand from Mr. Charette's instructions to the board, is that basically the evidence that you heard the last time remains before you, basically. So we don't need to represent all of that, basically. You've heard it. You've acted upon it. So what I'm going to really do is focus upon a couple of issues that I think the board needs to not rethink, but just sort of put it out there for you to think about. We can talk about it. I can answer any questions that you have. As you remember, one of the standards, or the standards that ultimately became problematic for the board, was the issue of undue hardship and what that meant as far as reasonable return on the property. So I'm going to talk about that some. And then also the 30% expansion that we spent a lot of time talking about the last time. And I think we had some confusion on that issue as well. And one of the things that I do want to apologize for bringing you out, particularly in this weather and what I understand is your vacation, to talk about this. But it really is very important to Mr. and Mrs. Buda in this particular issue is with respect to this property. It's a property that they have purchased. They would not have purchased it without a garage. Frankly, the property probably wouldn't have sold without a garage. But this isn't about being here talking about the highest economic return or that we're looking to maximize what we can do on the property. Because if that's what we were doing, if what we were looking was to build a Taj Mahal on this property and basically breach all of the setbacks or whatever else, or if we were looking to do something other than the bare minimum, then I think, frankly, from the board's perspective, you'd be well within your rights to say, no, you can't do it, we're not going to grant a variance. But what we're really talking about is what's a reasonable return for this property. And part of that is I know the board grappled about it, what's the definition of reasonable return? And there really isn't, because in part of it, it's what does your gut tell you, basically, with respect to these properties and what you do. And what's interesting is that I represent municipalities a lot, and everyone's always concerned about what's going to be the precedential value. If we let Mr. Buddha and Mrs. Buddha build their garage here, does that mean everybody gets to build a garage everywhere? And the answer to that is absolutely not. Basically, every property is unique, and if you remember, one of the circumstances that you talked about the last time is the uniqueness of the property, and does that create the need? Every property is unique, every set of facts is unique, and the board has to look at each case individually, and there isn't precedential value based upon what it's done once versus what it may do several months from now or several years from now. So basically, in this particular instance, with respect to the undue hardship, really what it comes down to is with respect to this property in a fairly, remote, isolated area, beautiful area, is that a garage really is a critical implement towards getting a reasonable return on this property. And the garage that we presented in front of you is a minimalistic garage. It's not a two-story garage with workshops and all kinds of other stuff. It's basically a place where we can get a car out of shelter, get a car in shelter, out of the weather, so that at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, it's not minus 10 degrees. The thing doesn't start on the way to work. And it's someplace where equipment can be put so that it's not sitting around out in the backyard under snow or in the spring after it rusts out, leaking oil or whatever into the water resource. It's a way to basically protect some equipment, protect a car, and from a very minimalistic perspective, just give meaning that the Buddhas will have transportation. And that's really what we're in front of you talking about. I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Well, we've already discussed that in the last hearing. We're going to need new evidence in addition to that.
I understand. The second part I wanted to talk to you about is the 30% expansion rule that we talked about, because there was some discussion then. There was a lot of confusion around the 30% expansion and what that means and what people can and can't do. And the 30% expansion, there was talk about whether this was a separate structure or an addition. I think that it's fairly clear that it's an addition. I don't know if we ever really reached a consensus on that, but I think there was an opinion to that extent.
Yeah, it's an addition.
So it's an addition, not a separate structure. And so then the real issue before you is, given that this building is a non-conforming structure, basically, what can and can't be done in connection with it? And there was a lot of talk about 30% and whether it's 30% of each livable space floor versus 30% of the foundation. And we talked about that a lot. And then at some point, I think you were considering whether to go to the city attorney for an opinion, and we got back. My understanding, and having taken a closer look at the ordinance on that issue, is that what we're talking about is a 30% of the footprint of the structure. And if you disagree, then please let me know that.
No, you're correct.
And so one of the things to think about is that the ordinance actually, even the shoreline, your own ordinance, and also the state ordinance contemplates that non-conforming structures can be expanded by 30% if they are within 175 feet, basically. And what does that 30% mean? Well, the 30% means that on a 24 by 36 foot house, the garage that's being proposed to you, 12 by 24, would be beyond the 30% expansion. And so, because that would be a 336, and what we really can do is get a square footage of about 281, just under 281 square feet. So one of the things that obviously before us is, we had a picture, we had a drawing as to where the garage was contemplated, but I think it's within this board's discretion to say, look, we're going to want you to move that closer to the road or closer to the water, which I suspect is not the direction we'd be wanting to talk about. But we're going to require you to move that closer to the road, and we're going to require you to get within the 30% expansion. And that's something that we can talk about and live with, if in fact that's the direction the board wants to go. Because I think the ordinance does contemplate a 30% expansion. We were here looking for variance for this, so I guess you could argue that we go and apply for a 30% expansion and then probably back here before, because Mr. So I was saying that we still have to deal with the whole setback issue, basically, even if we do that. But I guess my point is that your own ordinance and the state ordinance contemplates that non-conforming structures like this building can be expanded by 30%. And that's really in line with what we're in front of you talking about today. I think that's all I have. I really have a bunch of numbers if you want to know it's this size or that size or whatever else. But again, I think that under a pure variance perspective, the garage that's in front of you, you're in a position where you can grant a variance for that, given the evidence before and the additional stuff. But if that's not the direction we want to go, I think with the 30% expansion, the board can authorize that to happen. I know the board can authorize that to happen, and then we can talk about modifying the plan somewhat in order to make up that 50 square feet that we would have to deal with. Any questions?
It's only 50 square feet off from being within the 30%.
Yeah, 12 by 24 foot garage by my calculations would be 336 square feet. And 30% of the structure that's there now, which I believe is 936 square feet, is 280 feet. So we're about 50 feet off. And this board is in a position, because it can grant variances, obviously that's your primary function, could look at that and say, we're within 50 feet of the 30%, we're going to grant a variance to allow that to happen, and you don't need to reconfigure the garage and do things. I don't build garages, so I know a foot or two here and there can make a big difference, but it really satisfied the issue about trying to protect some of the equipment and a
In your
small
numbers,
car.
did you include the square footage of the porch?
The
porch that's where the garage is planned to go?
I did not, so we could make up some
They're
square
gonna
footage.
remove that anyways.
Right, but if that's considered part of the footprint, then that comes out of what that expansion would be for the 30%.
And I mean, you can. There's a
Correct.
lot of.
Correct.
There's the garage, which would add, which I think probably would make up that 50 feet. Frankly, there's also, and it was there before any of the actors here got involved. But there's also the patio that, and I don't know where
That's
that.
the 20% rule.
Yeah.
We're not.
Yeah, I'm okay with ignoring that, but I just
We don't want to go there.
All right. But I mean, with respect to the porch, I think we make up the 50 feet. I wasn't able to get the dimensions on the porch, but I think we would just about get there anyways with that existing. But I guess my point is that I think we with the 30% under your own ordinances, this can get done.
I would like to ask the code enforcement officer your feelings on this, meeting the criteria for 30% expansion within shoreline zoning. Please.
There's a couple issues here. What Mr. Jackson described is pretty correct. The one thing he did leave out is that this property is in shoreline. So when you apply a variance inside of that shoreline zone, then you need to meet the criteria that is established by the state of Maine. Undue hardship. That if they can't prove that, then you have no choice but to deny it. Secondly, the 30% rule has its caps. 25 feet is different, 75 feet is different again, 100 feet is different again. And I haven't really looked at that, so it's not just 30%, it's capped for the distance that you are from the water. And I haven't really looked at this because that hasn't been my concern. And when you figure 30%, you're looking at everything that covers the ground, including the porch and the patio. Whether or not the patio is illegal or not, I haven't looked at that, and we're not here to discuss that tonight. But that would have to be calculated in that 30% rule. So again, you're in shoreline, and you need to abide by the criteria in that shoreline for undue hardship. Yeah, you can apply variance, but only under the undue hardship criteria.
Which is what we're looking at anyway, I believe, right? Undue hardship criteria.
Right, you're still
which is what we made our original decision on.
correct.
Right. So, I mean, just a quick visual looking at this, it doesn't appear that it's more than 30% of coverage, including everything on this drawing.
Well, yeah, we're talking two different percentages now. The 20%,
I mean, 20%
20%
coverage.
That's
20% coverage, that's what I
You're not
meant.
even close
Yeah,
to
you
that.
got-
Not even
You're
close.
even looking
no,
at
you're
that.
not close to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it's what, 65 and a half feet from the water edge. With the 30% rule, doesn't he have to be at 75 feet?
So there's a criteria for 25, a criteria for 75, and a criteria for 100.
Okay.
And there's a limitation on that 30% increase, depending on how close you are to the water.
Oh, 30 is the max percentage on that then? With that type of,
Yes, it's 30% or. So if you're within 25 feet, I think they cap it at 800 square feet total. That's all you can have, including what's existing. 75 feet, I think it increases to 1,000, and then 100 it increases to 18. And again, that's total square footage of the addition, including the addition and what's there. So we haven't looked at the issue is the structure is too close to the water, it's in shoreline, and it needs to meet the undue hardship.
yeah, has to meet the hardship.
Which is going to be every case that we do on shoreline.
That's correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's correct.
yeah.
And if I may, just, the ordinance, it's, Mr. Charette, not surprisingly, is correct with respect to the numbers and stuff. But if you look at the ordinance, it's 75 feet, it's 30%, or 1,000 square feet total, whichever is greater. And then when it's 100, it goes to 30%, or I believe it's 1,500, whichever is greater. And so even though there's an actual square footage number, the 30%, if 30% is larger than the aggregate, that's what controls, under my reading of the ordinance.
That's correct.
Okay.
So I think we currently meet the 30% rule as far as the size of the garage. I mean, we could make it contingent based on something like that.
Well, I haven't looked at that to give you a yes or no. I just haven't looked at that.
Okay.
and that wouldn't be, that's not covered under hardship, right?
It is not.
Correct.
You're
It's
looking
a
at
whole different thing.
That's a different
We're-
animal.
We're
Okay.
here to determine whether he's presented new evidence that would change the decision of our hardship, the denial of him meeting the criteria for the hardship.
And the hardship is basically the setback from the road and the setback from the
road,
water.
from the lake.
And
road
from the
and
side.
lake.
Not the sideline. Sideline's 20.
The
so it
sidelines
meets.
are fine, but it's the road and the back.
I'm not sure if the applicant has looked at maybe finding another spot for the garage.
Well, that was gonna be one of my next questions. If there's possibly a way to relocate it
I'll
on
let you
this
ask that.
property. And in looking at this, there may be. It may be on the other side of the building, unfortunately.
And how would that change it?
Well, if you could
Further
get it
from the
outside
front.
of the 100-foot mark, then they're looking at a variance.
Then you're looking at a variance, right, which is 35 feet at 24, so you'd still have,
Yeah, we have no idea what that is.
well, you're far greater. Right here, you get 114 feet. Your number from here and there is far greater.
188.9.
And there's a lot of short cars that, most cars don't measure 24 feet long. You know, granted, it's nice to have a garage for storage as well as the automobile, but you could have a structure hold the garage that could measure 14 by 14 or 12 by 14.
What was that, Glenn?
A garage to hold a single car doesn't have to be 14 foot by 24 foot. I'm just looking at the possibility of moving that garage, making the garage smaller to get you beyond that 100-foot mark, and then come back and ask for a variance for sides in front. Right now, they propose a 14 by 24-foot garage, so they'll let for car storage and probably some other storage, which is nice, but
Well, car's no wider than 8 feet.
Realistically, you have to be able to open your doors once you get it in the garage.
No, that's what a lane is on a road, is
I
8
mean, it's
feet.
definitely no bigger.
You know,
than it
I mean,
needs
that's
to
what
be,
you gotta
but-
figure for the car to sit. 8 by, you know, if it's a pickup, you need a little longer.
But I think right now, instead of looking at this comes after your decision tonight.
Yeah.
You know, right now, you need to decide, are you gonna reconsider it or not? Well, you are reconsidering it.
Right.
Right now, you're gonna decide whether to deny that or not. And then the idea of moving the structure is in their ballpark.
And I personally think that's a little unrealistic too, based on how the house is probably laid out, considering the entrance of the house is currently on that end, which I would assume the bedrooms are on the other end.
If I may as well, as there is in the alternate areas, there's a ravine in here, and then there's the septic system in the area that I'm presuming that everyone's looking at, which is the more open area in here. My understanding is the septic system is not shown on the map, but is up in this
You'd
area.
only have 8'6".
Up in the left corner.
You'd only have 8'6" to do it, because it's 28'6" to the side.
And I just pointed that because we've got this long distance here.
Right.
You get closer to outer shoreline zoning.
No, I see what you were going for.
And the structure would need to be attached as well. It's not like we could say you can put up an unattached garage. It will be required to be attached to the facility. That's a Saco River corridor deal. Oh,
Could it be just shifted forward? What a lot of houses have done now.
Yeah, that's only,
before we even talk about doing any of that, we need to decide to whether new evidence has been presented that's gonna change our original decision on whether this property can yield or not yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted, because that is the item that failed.
But if I may, I don't think the legal standard is there new evidence. It's based upon the evidence that you've had before you, and the evidence that's been discussed today is what is your decision with respect to the variance request. You don't have to compare what you saw today versus what you saw at the last hearing. You're basically, as Mr. Charette pointed out, you're back to right before the vote. And so what you have is that evidence that was before you the last time and the evidence that's before you today, and then you have to vote. A motion for reconsideration, once it's granted, you're looking at the evidence before you. For example, a board can make a request for reconsideration on its own because a board member has reflected on it and decided that they want to do something different than what they did the last meeting. So it's really just looking at the evidence and making a decision on the criteria that you need to satisfy.
I think we need to be real careful on this too, because we're talking about every decision we make in the shoreline. We're not talking about one decision.
Well, I see nothing that's changed from before.
It doesn't have to. That's what we're saying. It doesn't have to, because we accepted this meeting we voted to see it based on that, what was the word on that? Unless the ordinance provides otherwise. Our ordinance does not require that they have to provide new evidence.
But
Correct?
then we're basing it on from the
That's
last
correct.
meeting's evidence, and nothing's changed.
Okay, at this time, okay, We've opened it up, we have a public hearing, so at this time I would like to read a letter that's been sent from a David St. Pierre to the Code Enforcement Office. And the letter reads as follows. It was dated Wednesday, December 27th, 2017, at 1:52, and was sent to the Code Enforcement Office Secretary, Tammy. The letter reads as follows. Hi Tammy, thanks for spending the time today to explain the variance application appealed by Elijah Buddha. We live at 90 Sequoia Lane and our land abuts the Buddhas. We do have concerns with the proposed garage. The Buddha's lot was originally deemed an unbuildable lot and was somehow reversed, and the home was allowed to be built. I believe at that time the setback requirements had to be amended, appealed to allow that to occur. So it's hard to agree that putting a garage in would be a hardship, or that is a surprise that the garage won't fit the code. Had we known that the lot buildability, that's a word, could be reversed, we would have purchased the lot many years ago to maintain our beach privacy, as their beach and a boathouse were put up right where we swim. More importantly, during the building of that home, the driveway that was put in encroached on our property line. In fact, while digging the driveway, our lot marker was dug out and moved. So I believe that the side setbacks have already been violated. We are concerned that the garage will continue that encroachment. Thank you. Lucille and David St. Pierre. Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chair, respond to that briefly. I just
Public
received.
hearing's still going.
Yeah, I just received
go
it.
ahead.
I just received it
Yeah.
at the beginning of the hearing. Is I know that Mr. Buddha spoke to both. I don't know where 90 Sequoia Lane is, number one, but I know we spoke to both abutters. Mr. Buddha did, and there was no opposition to the garage. First off, second off, what you have before you is actually a survey that was done by a surveyor who was here today, and it shows that there is no encroachment by the driveway on the neighbor's property. In fact, it looks like there's probably about a 10 feet space between where the driveway is located and where the property line is located. So I'm not sure whether Mr. St. Pierre is mistaken with respect to this project, but in any event, clearly there's no encroachment on the part of the driveway. And in fact, once the garage is built, any concerns he has with the driveway actually get minimalized, because the driveway is going to, get shifted over basically for the garage itself.
Yeah, driveway doesn't, we don't regulate driveways anyway. We just do structures and iron pipes that are supposed to be where they are.
They mentioned a
Not
boathouse in
disturbed.
that letter. They mentioned a boathouse in this letter?
I want to ask about that.
I just saw the letter. I don't know about a boathouse on the property.
Is there a boathouse on the property?
So I'm not sure they're talking about the same piece of property.
90 Sequoia is not next to us. I just looked it up on the
Yeah,
map.
it's on, it's not
Okay.
next to us.
So I'm not sure they have the right piece of property.
May I chime in here? When it comes to doing a ZBA appeal, I have to notify what they call a butters 500 feet all the way around the property in question. So even though they're claiming they're in a butter to you, it may not be directly, so yes, they could be looking at the wrong piece of property. Because in my conversation with Mr. St. Pierre, he was claiming that your driveway was U-shaped. And everything I had seen, I just listened to him. I wrote things down and I said, send it to me in a letter. Hence, that's what he did.
We're talking about a different property.
Okay.
Thank you,
Then-
Tammy.
Any other correspondence I've gotten, nobody's had an issue with anything they've wanted to do. They've said it would look great there.
The letter does state that his land does abut.
Right. I can
And
go
that's
and
a-
check, I can check the tax map with reference to both map lot numbers if you'd like.
Okay.
Would you like me to do that?
If we could, because
Yep.
it would be nice to know
I'll be right
exactly.
back with the picture.
We also have the surveyor here that could tell us what's on there for structures, whether or not there's a boathouse, and whether or not that pin was there when he surveyed.
Then let's clarify with this gentleman.
Tammy first?
as
Okay.
Whether this gentleman's letter is accurate or not.
As far as I know, there's only one boathouse on that lake, and that's at the property that's not part of Arrowhead. They have a stone wall there coming off, at the water's edge.
Yeah,
That's the only one I know about, and that's
Yeah.
actually on the river.
Not supposed to be any. I guess at this time, surveyors here that did this, and, yeah. I have a question. If you wouldn't mind coming to the podium, please, and introduce yourself to the board.
I'm Steve Everett. I live in Waterboro, and I'm a professional land surveyor. I did the survey for this piece of property for Mr. Taylor. And if you got any questions?
You did physically locate all the iron pipes in place, and
I did.
they all matched up with where they were?
Within a few
Within a
inches.
few inches,
Sure.
a typical
Yep,
plus or minus on the survey.
yep.
Okay.
And there was no boathouse on the property. I was there.
Okay.
Not to say I fish on it a lot, but
I guess I should take while we're waiting for Tammy, and make sure that yourself as a representative and your clients understand why we had the ability, why we read this letter in, not the first hearing that we had, but tonight.
Yeah, I
You're
understand.
aware
that
of
It's new evidence that was
new evidence
introduced.
because you've asked for a reconsideration, so we've opened it back up.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I don't have any
I
objection to
just
that.
want to make sure that you're,
Yeah, my objection is more that I think the gentleman is mistaken as to the project and what's being proposed.
that's why we're looking at getting a clarification on whether he's addressed about it.
Sure.
And he's within the distance to make that claim.
Yeah.
Yeah. While we're waiting for that, we're still in the public hearing phase. If anybody has any other questions they'd like to ask of anybody?
I just think my biggest concern with this project and any of the future shoreland zoning 30% increase projects, that we need to be very careful, because we have an ordinance that says we are allowing you to expand by 30%, knowing that you're too close to the water and that we have to give a variance, that this potentially a decision on this could potentially mean that it affects every other shoreline decision in the future. Because they're all going to have very similar criteria. They're all going to be coming here because they can't meet setbacks. And then they're going to have to prove an undue hardship. So if someone wants to add another bedroom on, they're going to have to prove that that's an undue hardship on their 30% expansion.
Yeah, there was a court case on that too.
So I think if we're not careful on this, we could be shutting down that whole ordinance and saying nobody can expand in shoreline.
Well, they can expand, they just have to meet the undue criteria, undue
Right,
hardship
right.
criteria.
But how are they ever going to
And
meet
that's
that?
not even looking at the 30%,
Yeah,
really. I mean, it's
Yep.
a hardship or it's not.
right.
The reason I brought up the 30% was that was a tool that was applicable prior to the changes in our shoreline zoning. And the new requirements by the DEP and the limitations as to what you can expand. Because it's truly not 30% now, correct?
That's correct.
They set the guideline as to what that number's gonna be, not necessarily 30%.
30% or 30% of the building. 30% or
Put
a
up
square
to so many
footage.
feet away from the water. That number changes,
It does.
yeah.
I'm very
So
aware
it's
of
not
how that
30 all the way
changes.
through, so.
No, it is still 30% or the square footage based on those
Well,
setbacks.
Yeah, right now we're having too much discussion without the Tammy recording it yet, so.
What you find?
Well, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
working on it. The St. Pierre's own 4 pieces of property up on Sequoia. 1674, which is what is their map lot number, has combined the other 3 lots with it. So based on our tax maps, they own this whole corner lot. This one is also included with it. It is a separate parcel by deed, but it has to be sold with it because of the way it's set up with Lake Arrowhead. So technically, they do abut you because they are right next door, but their house is on this lot.
You're 1676 and the lot in question is 1677. Yep.
That's the Buddhist, and then this is the St. Pierre's.
Yeah.
And I did double check to make sure that this lot was theirs, and it is in the Trio system. Our computer system is being part of their property.
Okay, thank you, Tammy, for finding that for us, clarifying that. So, definitely has been established that they are direct abutters. Okay. I guess at this time, I would ask if any further questions? Any members? Any more information to be presented by any of the public that's here?
No, we're fine, thank you. Appreciate your taking the time.
Okay, at this point, I would like a motion to close the public comment portion of the hearing.
Motion to close public comment.
Seconded.
Very good. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
Well,
All those in?
oh, yeah, no, I'm in favor of that,
Yeah, that's the public hearing.
yeah, just the public
Now
hearing
we're
part,
going to go into
yeah.
our discussion. The board at this time is going to enter into discussions and vote on the following. 10.04.1, variance for undue hardship. Except as provided in section 10.04.2, a variance shall be granted by the board only with strict application of this ordinance or local subdivision regulations to the applicant's property would cause undue hardship as defined by the state law 30-A MRSA 4353-4 amended on 5/13/2016. And we will go through the criteria items as we did in the previous hearing. And item number 1 is that the decision that needs to be made And a motion and seconded that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted.
I will make a motion that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted.
Okay. Second on that?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
As I was saying earlier, I have a lot of concern with the 30% expansion, that we have to be very careful on this. The other thing is, I do believe that this is a hardship. I think it is reasonable return to ask for a 1-bay garage. They're not asking for a 3-bay garage. They're not asking for a garage with a game room above it. They're asking for a very basic life need. So I feel that this is a reasonable return request.
Okay. 30%'s off the table today. We're not discussing that. That really doesn't have anything to do with it. What we need to determine is as to whether they're yielding a reasonable return for use of their property. And you were here at the workshop, and it was
I was.
pretty definitive.
It was, but
Wording.
we were also
As to what's-
told that it wasn't minimal return. It's not maximum return, it's not minimal return, it's reasonable return.
Yeah. Are they getting a reasonable use and return of their property? Can they yield a reasonable use and return without this variance?
I don't believe so, because I believe they need the ability to cover their equipment up and take care of their personal property. I think leaving, lawn equipment outside, leaving your vehicles outside shortens the life of all your properties. I think that's a necessity.
My feeling is I'm not opposed to trying to find a way to help it out, but at the same time, there's a multitude of homes in this town that do not have a garage, period. So it's not a life necessity that they actually have a garage. I just, that's my feeling. I'm not opposed to, they've asked for a very small size, I understand that. But they've got to meet the reasonable return, and is a garage a reasonable return? Now, if the neighborhood required it as part of their plans and requirements for the subdivision itself, that's a different story. If they had handicapped issues where they needed to get a van or a handicapped vehicle and have access inside without being out in the weather. But I think just to store equipment is, this property was designed for single-family lots, and that's what it is. And they do have a house there. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that when this was originally done, that they didn't make this happen with the original plan and the original approvals, because they were very specific in the original variance that this building was only going to be a certain size structure. So it's limited to that, and I'm just telling you that I think that they have the ability to use their house, and yeah, we all want a garage, but not everybody has one. It's not
I still have to disagree with you.
my opinion.
I agree with you. There are many houses in this town without garages, and I would probably say those people have a hardship also, because the ability not to protect their equipment and their belongings.
I think you have a motion on the floor with a second.
Yep, I do. Any further discussion?
Only that, I can see is it's not changed, anything's really changed in their application to be granted a variance.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and seconded. We'll take a vote that, as to whether to agree or disagree, the land cannot, a question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. How does the board vote on that? How many, agree? And disagree? The need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not the general condition of the neighborhood. Entertain a motion and a second for that.
Which one's that one again?
Number 2, a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not the general condition of the neighborhood.
One second.
I'll do it. I'll make the motion that the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property, not the general condition of the neighborhood.
Get a motion, second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those
The
in-
property is very unique, so I mean, it's a
Yeah,
unique
I don't
shape, it has an
disagree with
indent on it,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, so all those in favor of meeting that criteria? 3. With no abstentions. Number 3, that the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality.
I make a motion that the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality.
Second?
Second.
Yep, sorry. Okay. Discussion? None? All those in favor? Meeting the criteria? Yeah. Number 4, need a motion and a second. The hardship is not the fault of actions taken by the appellant or prior owner.
I make a motion that the hardship is not the fault of the action taken by the applicant or the prior owner.
Second.
Okay, any motion and a second, any discussion? None? All those agree?
So you don't have to do the remaining ones?
Hmm,
You don't have to do the remaining
Okay.
ones listed,
all right.
because they didn't meet the undue hardship.
That's the last page.
Yeah, you don't have to do that second portion.
Correct. Okay.
Right.
Okay, Sean, we make the motion for this last page.
Yep, that's where we're at now, at the last page. Need a motion to grant or deny the undue hardship variance, and unfortunately, you have to meet all of the points. If you miss any one of the requirements, then it is a denial. So I would entertain a motion that we deny the undue hardship variance request.
Second.
Okay. Any discussions? Okay. All those in favor of agreeing to deny? Okay. And to disagree? Okay. At this time, I must advise the applicant, if he or she is unhappy with the decision, they may request a reconsideration of the board within 10 days, which we've done that. Parties agree by this decision, may appeal it to Superior Court within 45 days of the date of decision, pursuant to 30-A MRSA 2691 and 4353 and the main rules of Civil Procedure Rule 80B. All right. Everybody understand? Okay. All right, at this time, I would make a motion that, or entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second? Great, all those in favor?